Chapter 35, The Gathering. The curled blast from a shofar sounded loud and long as the sun rose above the praying crowd. It was Yom Kippur, the last day of Rosh Hashanah, otherwise known as the Feast of Trumpets. The people were gathering in their new location just outside of Jerusalem. The authorities had deemed PRISM a safe zone for worship due to the recent bombings of the Wailing Wall. They were also assembling to hear Dr. Crowning's long-awaited announcement. The bombings had hit a large portion of the dome, but the new third temple remained intact, sparking outrage between the Muslims, Jews, and Christians. However, security clamped down tightly, primarily led by Dr. Crowning's army officials, who had seemed to unite the opposing Israeli sides against their outside invaders. The invaders' identity was still a mystery to them, but they believed they were multiple forces from the north. Because of new measurements on the exact location of the original Jewish temple, the governments had agreed to place the third temple immediately beside the Dome of the Rock. They would sign a new peace treaty in the coming months. Thus, the people gathered at the southern entrance of the PRISM facilities, walking on foot. They were unaware of the hideous display on the opposite side of the building at its main north entrance. The Prime Minister and many other dignitaries from their allied countries attended the gathering. Even the Pope had made his grand entrance. While waiting to be introduced to the tense crowd, Dr. Crowning stood in attention inside his towering entryway. The Prime Minister's forehead broke a sweat as he prepared in front of the cameras outside. After several sermons, the public continued awaiting the extraordinary announcement that the Prime Minister had promised. Those not severely injured had arrived, an innumerable mass of people arranged in lines by the scores of guards managing the scene. The bombings had destroyed several homes and businesses next to the Wailing Wall, and the dissident smoke was still furrowing in the distance. Children were dusty, hungry, and crying. Soon, John made his way forward, pushing through the crowd along with Savta, Brielle, Lydia, Rebecca, Martha, and Susie. However, guards stopped them from going any further. John motioned for them to keep their weapons safely out of sight among the crowd. He scanned the area for a way to get in, but barricades blocked them off for now. They were hoping the others would be able to find Joel and Rachel by this point. Once the crowd had settled, the Prime Minister approached the microphone.
My good people, I am sure you are wondering what this is all about. Why I have called you here despite the atrocious attacks occurring within our most beloved city, the United States, and other parts of the world.
His hands were visibly shaking, which was rare for their leader.
The attacks against our city are inexcusable, and those responsible will be brought to justice. However, the worst thing that we can do now is to panic. God did not teach us to fear our enemies, but to overcome them.
He threw his fist into the air and tightened his jaw in determination. His young wife, more enthusiastic than usual, threw her fist into the air with a series of shouts from the crowd.
So do not fear, my people. Today is a new day. Today we will rebuild and become stronger than ever.
The somber crowd began to gain confidence in his words and let out more cheers. Savta and the others looked at him skeptically.
Not only will we rebuild your homes and your businesses, but we will gain so much more. Today the partners of our country join me, our friends and our allies from several other nations. Our religious leaders are here, including our chief rabbis, imams, and the Pope himself.
The Pope nodded toward the Prime Minister and waved at the hopeful crowd. After a moment, the Prime Minister continued.
And now, I will introduce someone who needs no introduction. He is no stranger to you. I am confident that this man has the answers our country and the world have long awaited. A brother of our faith and heritage, Dr. Ahab Crowning.
Dr. Crowning emerged from the shadows, firmly embracing each leader's hand despite its bandage underneath his glove. The crowd burst into applause. Savta almost lunged toward Dr. Crowning, the man who had stolen her husband's onyx stone during his funeral. The one responsible for hunting down their family for generations with his twisted-faced minion, stealing their precious gemstones, tarnishing their holy relics. Now her grandson and his wife's lives were at stake. However, John held her back until a more opportune moment.
Just wait,
he said.
his time is coming.
Dr. Crowning ascended the stage, finishing his last handshake with the Prime Minister. He addressed the people with confidence.
Dear people of Israel, good morning.
The rest of the crowd was excited and well associated with Dr. Crowning.
Good morning!
In response, Savta did not feel like it was a good morning and wondered if their fellow citizens could think for themselves anymore.
Today is a good day. It is not a day of mourning, but of rejoicing. Like many of you, I too have suffered injuries. However, I have something that I hope you will allow me to share with you. Something that can fix all of that.
He removed his mangled hand from his glove and unwound the bandage. The crowd gasped.
It is true that my hand was greatly injured during the bombings. However, it is nothing compared to what many of you are facing. So much suffering, so much loss. But we can change all of that. Our technology has the answers to our food shortages, our crippled economy, our homes, our businesses, our environment, our world that the unleashing of unjust wars has demolished. PRISM has discovered the very fabric on which our universe was created in our validation of the Higgs boson, otherwise known as the God particle. And now we have discovered a brand new particle. One that we have created by passing these particles through potent and ancient crystals. It is a particle made of pure light. We call it the luminon.
The crowd cheered slightly.
Let me explain. With this new technology, not only can we rebuild what we have lost, but also gain so much more.
The crowd was silent. Behind them, Judas zoomed in with his camera, eagerly awaiting their reaction to what would come next. Dr. Crowning continued, raising his eyebrows slyly.
Some of you may think these are empty words. Just another politician trying to bolster his pride. However, I am a man of my word. Just watch what I have prepared for you on this day.
He motioned to the assistant and Ishani to pull two giant levers simultaneously, which raised a large platform towering above the crowd. The massive mirror stood upright, raised and centered on the platform, its golden overlays and precious stones sparkling in the morning sunshine. Two colossal colliders were positioned on each side of the mirror, both charged and ready to emit countless particles upon the mirror's reflection. At the north gate, a different crowd had gathered on the opposite side of the building. Shiva was situated there as their idol, seeming to dance within the spirals that encircled his lifeless form. Beside it, Rachel's body hung suspended on a pole. Although she did not realize it, her white wedding dress splattered with Ivan's blood fluttered around her in the breeze. Rachel watched helplessly as someone with a black hooded cloak stepped up on a ladder and finished tying her arms and legs tightly to the splintery wood. More people had arrived wearing the same hooded cloaks. She could not see any of their faces. The only face that she could see was the young man who had tried to reach her before they had dragged him away. Although the statue of Shiva stood between them, she could see that he was no longer conscious. They had hoisted him to a pole as well. He had said that his name was Joel. What did that mean to her? All she knew was that she was compelled to follow her orders. She felt hollow. Her mind was not her own. Inside the facility, Davy was growing impatient. He, along with Daniel, Yosef, Adam, Caleb, and Levi, had been led to a lower level and donned sheep costumes. They attempted to blend in with the performers who would soon entertain the crowds with their opening ceremony for the new PRISM facility. Davy shifted his feet and reached behind Yosef to tap Daniel's shoulder.
Dad, Joel should have made it out with Rachel by now if he had found her,
Whispered Davy.
What should we do?
You're right.
Said Daniel. He had to stop when a young makeup artist skipped around and polished his face with more black and white paint. She had embellished her own layer of wool with a pink tutu that ruffled against his elbow. Daniel gently nudged her away, but she did not let it stop her from skipping as she twirled around to the others. Once they were rid of her, Daniel continued.
Keep the lights on your weapons hidden, and let's go back through that tunnel toward the exit.
Slowly, they began separating from the others. Another artist approached them, a large man dressed as a goat. He held a plastic sword and shield the rest of the actors had for the show, and he looked at their realistic weapons with envy.
Where are you going? The show is about to begin.
My son is a little nervous. It is his first performance. Do you have a restroom nearby?
Asked Daniel.
Right over there.
The goat man pointed toward the tunnel.
Be quick about it.
I have to go too.
Said Levi.
Me too.
Said Caleb and Adam. Daniel and Yosef collected the boys and walked toward the restroom. The goat man rolled his eyes and turned away. Once they were sure the coast was clear, they escaped down the tunnel and back into the main lobby where Joel and Chester had separated from them.
Joel went this way,
said Davy, pointing toward the corridor that led to Pandora's office. Soon, the gemstones on their weapons began to glow. Despite their attempts to hide the light, a guard saw them and stepped forward. His face was familiar.
Larry?
Said Daniel.
Is that you? What are you doing here?
Daniel, I left the States during the Great Evacuation and wound up here. I couldn't hunker down there when that whole country's about to blow. It's nothing but chaos and riots. Those on the surface will probably destroy each other before Yellowstone finally does blow. I thought maybe I could find Susie and ask her for more clues about Bill's death.
We have already solved that case,
said Daniel. Larry looked up with a raised brow, pretending to be surprised.
Is that so?
It was the man we told you about, remember? The man with the twisted face,
said Levi, still feeling guilty for telling his dad to investigate him.
I had narrowed it down to him after finding out that old Jim was not at the ballpark that night,
said Larry.
I just needed more proof.
Did Ralph and his family come too?
Asked Caleb.
No, they stayed behind too late,
said Larry. Caleb and the boys looked down. They knew it meant another family they once knew was about to die.
What kind of getup are you guys wearing?
Said Larry with a smirk.
Never mind that,
said Daniel, trying to hurry things along. He and the boys began shearing their sheep costumes from their regular clothes.
We can show you plenty of proof for your investigation, but right now we need to find Joel and Rachel. Their lives are in danger. Have you seen them?
Joel and Rachel? Yeah, I have seen them. I believe they are finishing their news report. Come right this way.
Larry turned, pleased with himself, and began leading them down the corridor to the outer north gate. Before they reached the exit, something felt off to Davy. He looked down and noticed bloody skid marks on the floor. Looking closely, he saw that it led to the office with Pandora's name. He could hear whining from the other side of the door. He lingered behind while the others went forward and tried the door. It was locked.
Dr. Pandora, it's Davy, Joel's little brother. Are you in there?
The whining intensified. It sounded like a small puppy, but now, low groans ensued. Adam looked back, noticed Davy was gone, and returned to join him. Once he had backtracked, Adam saw Davy looking at his glowing sword. Davy placed one finger over his lips and then, gripping his sword, swooped downward, making a clean break on the door latch. As soon as he opened the door, he saw a gruesome sight. Chester, his loyal and beloved dog, was lying there, shot to death with his paws outstretched.
Chester! Chester, no!
Davy held him in his arms, crying. Adam leaned over to help, but it was no use. Then they heard scratching from the floor. High-pitched whimpers and groans continued. Adam bent down to listen. He lifted the rug and discovered Pandora's secret hatch. Gently, he opened the lid. A thankful, whimpering Ben came leaping out, shivering in Adam's arms. By this point, Caleb and Levi had joined them. Below, in the thick darkness, Caleb pointed his light. He could make out the face of a broken man, his mouth tied and his body bound with ropes. Although blood had streaked across his forehead, they recognized his face from Joel's videos. It was Dr. Pandora. Caleb made his way down.
Let me help you, Dr. Pandora!
The air was thin. Ice was growing on the walls. Growls and shrieks began emanating from the tunnel below.
We have to get him out of here! Quick!
Adam and Levi climbed down. They used their swords to slice the ropes around his hands and feet, finally freeing him. Then they placed their arms underneath Pandora's shoulders, helping him gain enough leverage to stabilize him as he slowly climbed the ladder. Davy collected himself, still upset, but mustered the strength to help lift him out of the hole.
Dr. Pandora, are you all right?
Asked Levi.
Where's Joel and Rachel?
Asked Davy.
They've taken them! I tried to stop him!
Cried Pandora.
We must save them and shut down that infernal machine!
He pointed helplessly toward the corridor.
Let's go,
said Davy.
Show me where they are.
This way!
Shouted Pandora, stumbling in the same direction where Larry had led the others.